Good morning, Jith, Nish. Thank you for the invitation. It's a delight to be here streaming the first of this four-part series based on parenting for character. And today we're looking at parenting foundations. So the basic principles, the basic checklist that you need to have. You need to be able to tick these boxes. First of all, a few things about myself. That's the book on the top left, which is now in its second edition by Perusia Media. It's also published by Scepter Press in the States. Most of my professional career I've been involved in schools. So I was the principal at Redfield and Wallamai in Sydney. And I've been for a number of years now involved on the board of Harkaway Hills, which is the first of the Parents for Education schools down in Melbourne. The big influence on my life really has been St. Josemaria. And if you look in the bottom right of that slide, you can see the person in the blue hat. That's me. That was 400,000 people in the square of St. Peter's in 2002 at his canonization. But his words to parents to ask them to take full responsibility for the upbringing of their children and to be the decisive influence on the lives of their children and to pass on a very strong character as well as faith. That message really has resonated with me, and it's left a big impression in my soul, I suppose you would say. My studies, most recently, I finished a doctorate in 2012, focused on what happens in our brains when we build character. So what's the basis neurologically of virtue? And I've looked at virtue particularly from a Aristotelian Thomistic direction, so the cardinal virtues and the virtues as the basis of good habits in our lives. I suggest that at the end of these 4 sessions, each night that each session finishes, sit down as a couple, if you can, and think about the points that strike you. Set 1 or 2 goals, and then remember that goals that we regularly review have a very good chance of taking root in our behavior. And I want you to look at the face of that friend of mine who's about 20 meters off the ground. He's not a small man, and he's doing this. His son is at the bottom watching Dad, and look at his face. He's really doing his best. If you're not a small man and you're trying to abseil, you know that the rope starts to slip, and it's very unnerving as you lean out over the abseil. Well, the rope is starting to slip, but he's doing his best, and he's got a smile on his face. So my suggestion is that we need to be honest with ourselves about the things we need to change. And it's interesting, isn't it? Most parenting courses you would think are about strategies with children, but one thing inevitably you will walk away from in these sessions is clarity about the things you need to change. Let's look at the first principle of good parenting, and that's unity. And this is regardless. So if you have the misfortune of no longer being with your partner, with your spouse, but you have a child, if your spouse is still alive, then whatever you need to do to work together, work together. There's no alternative. Your child needs really consistent messages from you, even if you're not living at home together. But anything you can do to be completely united, you know, in the kitchen, in the lounge room, that you guys are on the same page, that you don't have different agendas for the children. A beautiful story. This is a true story, and it shows also that you need to do whatever you need to do to change to keep your marriage alive, because parenting is an invitation not just to be the best parent you can be, but to be the best spouse you can be, because your love for your spouse is going to model for your child what true love is. And very, very importantly, it's going to model that love, if it's at all possible, you need to show your child that love does not run out, because this is a big lesson in life. And if for whatever reason you have the misfortune of not being together, you still have to show your child that love does not run out, that you still have a very high regard for each other. You forgive each other. True story. A member of staff that I had with me, a wonderful man, a good friend, he told me this story in front of other people in the staff room on a Monday morning. He said he was driving home on the previous Friday, which was Valentine's Day, and his son was sitting next to him. His son was 10 years old and as forthright as his dad. And the boy said to his father, "Dad, it's Valentine's Day. Aren't you going to stop and buy Mum some flowers?" And he said to his boy, "I don't believe in all that commercial nonsense." And then his son said to his father, "Dad, it's not what you believe in, it's what Mum likes." And he stopped. He got out, he got the flowers, got back in the car. They had a wonderful night, he said, and he was very grateful to his son, but I'm very grateful to him for his humility to talk about that. And everybody learned a lesson out of that it's so important that you never give up on making your relationship with your spouse the best possible, a triple A marriage. Look at that quote from Homer. This is close to 3,000 years ago. There is nothing better in this world than that man and woman should be of one mind. This slide shows Damien and Tatty Berger. Damien and Tatty, with two other young couples, are the founders of Harkaway Hills College in Melbourne, the first Parents for Education school in Melbourne. Listen to what they have to say about unity together.
When I was little, I remember coming into the kitchen and seeing my parents, they were hugging. And when I came in, I sort of took a step back. And then I just felt really good. Just the idea of, that my parents loved each other. So I've always thought that it's important for my children to see that, that we love each other. So I try to, say during dinner time or something, or preparing for dinner, put music on and maybe dance in the kitchen, stuff like that. So
yeah. And I think for me, often because I'm at home with children all day, Damien's at work. I mention him a lot throughout the day. I mention Daddy, and I'm looking forward to when Daddy gets home, and when we have dinner together, and Daddy would love to see this. And I think it's just speaking. They know that he's always on my mind. They know that I'm always thinking of him, and I'm always waiting for him to get home, and that is the highlight of our day when Daddy gets home. So we all love Daddy.
That's beautiful, isn't it? And simple message, but very important. And this responsibility extends to all aspects of your interaction with your child. So it's not just your own example between yourselves, obviously, but you know that your child is watching everything that you're doing. That's a very sobering quote, isn't it, from an author who wrote several big sellers, but he talks about how everything we do leaves an imprint on children. And sometimes it's very hard to avoid leaving smudges through our own insufficient example. There is no alternative. It's important to be so dedicated. One of the great challenges in our time is to raise young people who are not just idealistic, that's hard enough, but that they have the wherewithal to put their ideals into practice, that they have the fortitude to seek justice in the world and care for others with all their being. You will mark yourself down the track in your parenting on whether or not your children have adopted your ideals, but also whether they have had the good habits in their lives in order to effectively love others with constancy and perpetually. So there's a little bit of work to be done. Having children makes no one more a parent than having a piano makes you a pianist. Second big principle is to treat every child as unique. Look at the two little girls in pink. Identical twins, but already, although they are identical, they have different temperaments. Temperament is not something which is just purely part of the biological genetic code that you're conceived with. The reality is that from the very first moments after conception, already epigenetic factors are starting to kick in, and already by the time these children were born in their first months of life, their parents realized that they had distinctive temperaments. Amazing, incredible. already in their first months of life, one was more adventurous, the other was more timid. So what does this mean for us? That you have to take every child where they're at. You can't measure them against their siblings. You can't feel that they're not as good as they should be. Deal with them where they are and love them as they are with all of your heart. Here's a beautiful short 1-minute video on the Raised to Love website, which shows parents also have to focus on the temperament that they have, because it will play into the way that they raise their kids, and it's important that they accommodate that and they understand each other.
Well, I've been blessed with two quite different temperaments. I'm a peaceful phlegmatic and Maureen is a powerful choleric. And that has, over the years, has sort of had its positives and negatives. It's the best way to put it.
I actually thank God that he's a peaceful phlegmatic, because I need peaceful phlegmatic to tone me down, because I'm glad I discovered what I was, because it certainly has helped me in certain situations understand that I am very bossy, and also thinking my idea is actually always the best idea. I might be ready to go full of the gate at something, Pat will say, no, maybe that's not the best.
We didn't want to sort of perhaps rush in with probably a punishment that you couldn't actually fulfill anyway. You know, no television for a year. You know, something that didn't work. So hang on, let's just sort of think of something a little bit sort of more practical.